Hola, welcome to the Latino Business Journey Podcast. I'm Michael Puente. This podcast is presented by the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It's intended to tell the rich history of Latino-owned businesses here in Illinois. In today's program, we're highlighting a mainstay restaurant in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood for decades, Taqueria Los Comales. Camerino Gonzalez founded Taqueria Los Comales more than 50 years ago. Joining us to talk about the history and struggle to get Chicago's first taqueria up and running are Camerino's children, Larry and Christina Gonzalez. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Michael. Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, let's get started. Your father started the restaurant business 50 years ago, but did he really intend to start a restaurant? What was those early beginnings like? Christina.
Camerino's early beginnings were that with that intent. He always had an entrepreneurial spirit. He came to this country at 15 years old and worked in the Bracero program and made his way out to Chicago. And he saw the need. He was working multiple jobs and most of the time wanted to get a quick bite. And a lot of it was, patty melts and diners that we would know and visit and frequent now. But he was looking for tacos. So he was like, I need this. Having moved from the Jalisco to Mexico City, there was the tianguis, there was all the taquerias there. And so he learned a lot of that, honed a lot of that. And when he came here back in the 70s to make extra money, he would make the tacos, and with my mom, they'd pack up a van and a borrowed van, and go sell in front of the Aragon Ballroom up on the north side.
Wow. Larry, did he ever talk to you? I mean, you talked a little bit about how he learned how to do this preparation for the food. Was he always sort of a chef type that he wanted to learn how to do this?
Yeah, he always, experimented a lot at the house. He would always, try to say, here you go, try this, try that. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? But main thing is he was a showman. He wanted to be the guy up front. He wanted to, if he saw a microphone, he was jumping in front of it. He wanted to announce. He knew advertising. He knew how to market what he was trying to sell.
Do you know in those early years, was he marketing more towards other Mexicanos here in Chicago, or is it pretty much anybody who would come before who would buy his tacos?
Oh, I think absolutely. He was marketing towards the Mexicanos because at the time they lived on the southwest side of Chicago, which was mostly Eastern European. So there was really no taquerias at that point. And he saw that need and said, there's a lot more immigrants here that are Mexicano, and ellos necesitan nuestra comida. They need our home style food. And so he, with that idea and intent, said, let's get a taqueria going where we can serve our people. And it wasn't exclusive to our people, but that was the intent, was to give them a feeling from home.
I guess it was also a certain type of tacos that he liked, right? Sort of these Mexico City type tacos. How are they different, say from other tacos? Well,
traditionally, from Mexico City, it's 2-3 times the size of New York City, just to give you an idea. Very, very big. The tacos were very small. It was more like a tapas. So you can have different types of meat, whether it be pork, whether it be beef or fish or whatever. So yeah, there was at least 7 or 8 different types of tacos.
Now, starting that first location in Little Village, when did that happen, and how did he talk about the struggles of finding the right location?
It was like a perfect storm, I would imagine. What he told me it was opportunity and timing, and it just worked for him. Hard work obviously played a big role in it, but at that time, a lot of people were looking just like him for his home style street tacos, and that's just became a boom there. And him being the announcer and flagging, saying, hey, or I have it here in Chicago, I think it brought a lot of different people that were looking for the same stuff. Small, delicious, fresh, homemade tacos.
I think it was difficult for them in the beginning. I know that he personally told me that he had a lot of finance issues finding financing for the business and whatnot. He had a product and he knew what to do with it. He just didn't have the backing, the financial backing. And that's when he, after knocking on doors for banks after banks after banks, he went into, and again, you have to remember, an immigrant without papers, banks weren't necessarily throwing money at them. So he went over to a friend. He had made so many loyal friends in so many industries. He worked at Ed Mignot, where he learned how to cut meats and all the carniceria skills. And he worked with Mario's Ballroom, which is now it's a nightclub now, still in Little Village, but he asked him for a loan. He was his boss. He was a bartender there and said, I need some money for a down payment to get this loan to open this restaurant. And people believed in him. And the struggle was real, but it was even more real was his dream and his tenacity and the resiliency that he had to keep going and keep going.
Did he ever talk to you about maybe and I know this probably might be sacrilegious, about giving up? Because for a lot of people, just a couple of failures, they would just say, what, this is not worth it. Did he ever feel like, maybe it's not worth it?
He's never given me the inkling of that idea. It was 2 feet forward on everything that he did, not only in taquerias, everything that he did. Mm-hmm. He would just put blood, sweat, and tears. And I think that's what kind of a lot of people kind of admired him, because he was there day, night, mornings, going to buy product, coming back. They just saw him there all the time at his place.
What was his first intention of coming to the United States? I mean, did he see himself going into the restaurant business, or what was his first intentions here?
His first intentions were, my grandfather went from Jalisco to Mexico City because they couldn't sustain the 7 children on a farm anymore, on a ranch. And so they came to Mexico City with job opportunities. He had 2 sons working the ranch, and it still wasn't enough. These are people, my uncle and my dad and my aunts, meager education. They went 3rd grade, if that, 4th grade, some of them. And so when he left Mexico, he came with a sense of the patriarchal figure. I have to do what my dad just did, and I have to help lead my family. And I think that was the leading force that kept him energized to do everything he did. He came to this country and he sponsored my aunts and my uncles, and one by one we brought them over. He brought them over and trained them in the restaurant with us. They worked side by side with us as they would come along throughout their 80s and 90s, and then they opened up their restaurant slowly. He taught them and honed them and trained them, and I think that was his satisfaction, the greatest, that he was able to help his family.
So that was one of his main goals. It wasn't just, I'm going to learn this myself, shut everybody out. He wanted to bring more people in, primarily his family, to learn the business so they can prosper.
Absolutely. And after the family, it comes the employees. And after the employees, it came anybody that walked through his door. A lot of history of older employees that are telling me, your father, when he would tell the waitresses or waiters, if they don't have any money, it's okay. Just tell them, it's on me, Camerino Gonzalez, bienvenidos here in the United States. Just make sure you come back with a bunch of friends.
And they did. Generations and generations kept returning. And I call it the taco indoctrination. The first immigrant family would come in and then they'd bring their children. And now we're on to the grandchildren's generation.
But now there are taquerias everywhere. Mexican food has exploded. You've got, sort of the main comfort foods, but then high end. How do you keep Taqueria Los Comales? How do you keep it still probably Chicago's favorite place to get Mexican food? How do you keep that going?
Yeah, no, it's very difficult, and we are experimenting, and R&D is working their butts off to figure out what's the next step. Technology obviously is taking a front hold on us right now. COVID taught us a lot of different things as well too, but I think more importantly, again, we have to understand that it's Mexican food, so we have to be advocates for Mexican food, not just for Taqueria Los Comales. We're talking about a lot of great locations out there, great chefs and mom and pop stores that need to rise up and stand. We all need to stand together. Eventually, we're hoping that they will drop into a Los Comales, one of the 17 locations, but we're advocating Mexican street food, Mexican food.
I think that's key for my dad as well. He never had competition. And I don't mean that in this literal sense. I mean, he never saw anyone as competition. He always saw them as someone he could collaborate with, learn from, and they could learn with him. One of his closest friends was Raul Muñoz from Atotonilcos. And, people would naturally say, oh, Atotonilcos and Taqueria Los Comales, they must be enemies or something. And no, we're actually friends with their children and have maintained friendships, long-lasting friendships throughout our family. And it was because it was an appreciation and a respect, one for the badge of the honor that you went through to just become what you became working in this industry and being in Chicago and coming as an immigrant family. But it was also, for him, it was the rising of his raza. It was the allowance to say, I'm part of this, but I'm not the big main part of this. I am one part of it that culminates and makes this raza come up better, and that's what I want to be helpful with.
And those early years, starting the first restaurant location in a little village, how difficult was it, not just to open it, but then to keep it going?
Well,
It wasn't difficult for me. I'm not that old.
I started working with him at 14, and I would hear stories then. We would come in the morning at 6 and 7 a.m. on Saturdays, and to be honest, it was a rough and tumble neighborhood. La Villita was, and we would come in and there would be broken glass somewhere or a table broken, and then we'd eventually hear from the night manager, who we closed at the time at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning sometimes, after all the clubs had closed down and back in that day, in that time. And we would hear, oh well, there was a bar fight, or oh, there was a fight in there, and there was this, and I would hear other stories about gangs trying to come in, and the cooks all kind of banding together, protecting the restaurant and the patrons, and and it was silly, but it sounded silly, but it wasn't. They really were protecting them with like chidas, which is that long, the sharpening tool for knives and whatnot, and just kind of standing there saying, not allowing people in. So it was hard in those days because you had the segregation of the natural segregation that Chicago has, different communities. And so you were in a bubble and only those people would come into your restaurant. So it was hard to get and capture other demographics to come into the restaurant, which is another reason why we went to so many different locations in the specific areas we went to, was to try and break those demographics. And so it was hard. There were things to deal with, but he found a way every time. He chugged through.
Everybody has now their favorite cooking show or restaurant type show. And it seems very glamorous to own a restaurant. And maybe it is, but it's also a lot of work to get up every morning, like you said, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, get everything prepared. How difficult was it for your father to maintain that? It's a lot of work.
It is. I
day in and day out.
agree with you, day in and day out. And how do you reinvent yourself? How do you motivate yourself? But his big motivation was to just keep growing. You always had another level to go to. You always had another person to help out. You always had another brother or sister or aunt or uncle. There, after a while, they were calling him Godfather because he was God Padrino to a lot of people. It just helping people. 24 hours a day, you're working, you feel tired, right? You lay down, you're still exhausted, tired. But when you lay down with the grace that you've helped somebody get to a better place, I think you sleep more peacefully, better, and you wake up and you want to do it again, and you want to do it again. And I think that's what he instilled in all of us. It's not about you. It's about how you touch other people's lives moving forward.
Now, the idea of expanding, he must have seen headlines or talked to people say, the Mexican population continues to grow and grow and grow. So that opened up some opportunities for the restaurant. When did you start expanding, and how did you select the locations?
We started expanding in the 80s. We started actually with a location in Texas, in Houston, Texas, on Irvington Boulevard. And that, again, was a friend that he had befriended a long time ago and said, I'm going to help him. He's a great guy. He cooks well, and he learned with us. The difficulty there was a growing pain, where he knew it was difficult to keep looking at going and visiting two different locations in two different cities. So that one was first, and then the third one was the Los Comales in Pilsen. This was after my uncle had gone through his training and tutelage and learning under the Los Comales in La Villita, and then opened Pilsen Los Comales. And so I think a lot of it was him trying to make sure that he made a good fit. And that's, I think, what he taught Larry and I, was to get a good fit between the location, not just the location, the community, the owner, the employees, the staffers, everyone that's going to be working there. And I think a lot of it was, at that point, it was, well, Pilsen is supposed to be, or was at the time touted as the gateway for the entry area for Mexicanos, immigrant Mexicanos, and then Little Village, it poured over, and then Little Village just overcame the numbers. And after that, he realized, there's people in Cicero, there's Hispanos everywhere, there's Mexicanos. And then at that point in the 90s, we really just were kind of like trying to go as quickly as possible with as much heart and soul as possible to open more locations. And we were picking demographically. Pepsi-Cola was very good to us. They helped us with some demographic numbers. And my dad was like, let's find them. He was recreating in his head what he had gone through in the 70s. Like, wow, I'm getting out of work. I have an hour and I don't have anywhere to eat here that I know I want to eat. And those are comfort foods. We're talking tacos de cecina, tacos de tripas, tacos de sesos, tacos de hígado. People were still not selling that in the 80s. And so it was still a delicacy to a lot of them. So using that information, he always armed himself with that information and said, okay, let's go here now. Let's go here. And then he started to break into the non-Hispanic traditional neighborhoods, which started with Niles, I believe.
Right. Niles, we would follow, the people, the Latinos. We would follow them where they would go and, have their birthday parties and have their caterings done by us. So he just stayed true to his roots, which was the tacos. If a location had fajitas or any type of dishes or liquor, we would just kind of tout our tacos. That's what we want to do at that point.
Was your father open to you said there was a lot of things that were still sort of delicacy here in the United States, haven't been tried, but were there other sort of newer ingredients, new ways of doing things that maybe somebody tried to introduce and he just said, maybe that's not for us.
Well, we are casero. So, and I can't, even the best cooks in the world, if a customer is asking for something maybe not that spicy or maybe a little bit more spicy, they will make it. They will make it to what the customer wants. Yeah. So a little by little, adding gorditas, adding tostadas, and then the chimichangas start coming in, and then we're like, what is that? What are these things? But it was evolving. I think the customers were asking for certain things, and our cooks and our caseros cooks, they just were doing the best they could. But hands down, everybody comes in for the tacos.
Your father assisting employees to not only become working as an employee, but also maybe helping run a restaurant location or become an owner. Can you tell us a story about that? Maybe one particular that comes to mind?
Sure. Our Niles location, celebrating their 23rd, 24th year now. That family, the Cisneros family, Juan Cisneros, started when he was 15 years old, working with my father. Me and Juan taught me how to cook, how to learn things, how to order things, how to deal with customers. Everything from a customer coming in to a customer leaving, we knew how to do. He taught me how to do that. Going forward, my father was like, I think we need to make a step forward and let's look for a location. The location was all on us, all the paperwork, everything was done on us, but Juan would run the day-to-day business, and he has done a phenomenal job with his family, his wife, his kids, his sisters. His sister's been working with my father too, Estela, Maribel, Bertina. They all contributed, and that factor alone, we were in a location that necessarily was not predominantly Latino, but we planted a flag there, and people saw them there every single day working as hard as they can, and there is a response.
And I think it was a perfect storm, too. I think society and communities were ready. You had a lot of families now, more than ever, in the late 80s, early 90s, interracial families now. And so people were fusioning a lot in their foods. And so they were trying more foods, and they're educating their palates. And so now we started to also have that crossover of, people who weren't even Hispanic, like, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Mexico, these tacos de cecina, estos tacos de al pastor, they're really good. Obviously, they weren't speaking Spanish, but they were, attesting like, wow, I've tasted the real deal in Mexico, and this is the real deal here. So I think it was a wonderful, perfect storm, too, of us. At the same time, we went out into these other neighborhoods that the communities were now becoming more educated with their palates.
Absolutely. We got involved in the Taste of Chicago, 2004. That was, Los Comales already had a few 12 locations. I remember talking with the city, and they were like, okay, how many tacos did you guys sell? And I gave her the number. Again, you think of a taco, you're thinking like a big taco, 1 or 2, but taquerias, we would sell 4, 5, 6. So we were selling these as bunches by twos. They were floored. We surpassed more than the pizzas, which there was 5 or 6 different pizza locations. There was only 2 taco places there. La Justicia, us, and I forgot the other, Jesse's place.
Los Dos Laredos.
Los Dos Laredos. But they were doing a lot of these other dishes. We just concentrated on the tacos, and they wanted different types of tacos. Let's try to put lettuce, tomato. We stood fast to our traditional cilantro, cebolla, and salsa. Wow. If you don't want the cilantro, cebolla, and salsa, here you go. Here's plain for you. The cheese is right over there with the pizza.
God, getting really hungry just talking about that everything. You have an example, Christina, of another perhaps employee who rose to the top ranks?
I do. She's so dear to our hearts. There's so many. There really is so many. But one that really comes to mind that is still with us today is Rosa Robles. Rosa, she started with us when I was 16 years old. She was a waitress with us, and so she has made such a long-standing impact on our family and on our life and in the Los Comales family that she's even painted on the back mural of the building as well with another team that was very close to my dad, Juan's sister Estella, and another waitress, Betty. And this woman has pivoted and adjusted and changed over the years. Obviously, she's similar to my age or close in my age, a little older, and with the advent of technology, so she overcame language barriers when she first came there. In the beginning, everyone spoke Spanish, so there was no problems. But by the late 80s, people were speaking English coming in there and asking for food. And so she learned English, and she worked the tables, and she did everything. And then when she had a baby, Elysian, she got older and whatnot, she wanted to slow down a little bit. And we says, Rosa, we don't want you to leave. We can train you to be a cashier. She was intimidated by the technology. And she rose to the top and said, she rose to the challenge, and she learned the POS systems. And then when the pandemic hit, that was tough. That was really hard. And our concern, and of course my dad's concern, was, I don't care what we have to do, but Rosa is staying on our payroll. We have to give her something to do. We have to train her. We have a responsibility to all of our people, as our employees are not employees. They were my dad's extended children. And family members that he felt that close to. So, we started to train her for deliveries. We said, how do you feel about deliveries? We can get you a dolly, we'll get you a belt, we'll get you whatever you need. It's not that we'll get you an assistant. And so she started doing a lot of the catering deliveries. And right now I think she's a hostess for a couple of days. And then she prefers her catering. She loves the catering. She loves talking to the people. But our customers for over 30, 40 years now have become accustomed, as Esaú was, to come in there and see her face at that register and chit chat with them and talk about things and how are things and whatnot. So I'd say Rosa Robles is one of the most impactful.
Yeah, and there's many Rosa Robleses in different locations.
Yes,
Pilsen, Aurora, Joliet. People we don't have that turnover rate like people would think in the industry. We really invite them. We conserve them them. We try to help as much as we can because they are helping us on a day-to-day basis.
Christina brought up a little bit about, and we touched upon it a little bit about the pandemic. I know people think, oh, it's over with and everything, and it kind of is, but those were some challenging days. How did the taqueria overcome the challenges of COVID?
Yeah, it was definitely a shock to everybody because we were so used to just being full and so used to being Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just crazy. All of a sudden, everything stops. All of a sudden, everything, the world kind of stops.
Right.
I would attest to, again, Camerino Gonzalez, he made a drive-through in our little village location.
When we constructed
the
10
new
years
building.
before the pandemic.
This was something that he wanted, and he would fight with the architect. The architect's like, this is not going to work. Why a drive-through? You're a big restaurant, 7,000 square feet. You have enough people. He wanted that drive-through because he knew people, it's convenience. People have kids. It snows in Chicago. You want to just go through the drive-through and make that convenient. But yeah, it helped us a lot through COVID. Our drive-through, us bringing food out, deliveries, that was a staple of most of our locations. After that, you have to have a drive-through. This will help you in any way.
And I think we gained a lot of respect for the drive-through. We loved the drive-through idea. I remember us inaugurating it when we inaugurated the building, and people were just floored. It was like they got on a ride or something at Disney. They were like, "This is the best," and we loved it. But we really gained so much respect for it because we really saw that it at one point had become 50% of the sales. When you're seating over 200 people in your building, and that becomes 50% of your sales, you start giving it a little bit more respect. In addition to the drive-through, we pivoted. My dad was like, all right, I remember March 16th, 17th, he sits down with Larry and I, the place is empty. We're shut down for all intents purposes. And he says, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? How are we going to sell our tacos? First and foremost, we don't know how long, but we're probably going to be down 2 weeks. What do we do with all this food? And, we all put our heads together and we're like, let's donate it. Let's give it away. And it was amazing because we prepared all of the food. We made tacos and sent them out to the local hospitals because we were hearing the hospitals, no one could come in to deliver food. No one could come in to deliver to the snack machines. No one could come in. And these people were basically held up in their hospitals, the workers, because they were nonstop working. So we donated to St. Anthony, Mount Sinai, UIC, Rush University, Northwestern. We donated to every hospital we could. We cleared out the refrigerators. And after that, it came back tenfold because then the doctors and the medical companies and the pharmaceutical companies started to place catering orders with us. We also pivoted and said, well, if we can sell food in a bag to someone, why can't we put that in catering? And we came up with the grab-and-go bags. And with that, we were like, look, no one touches anything. It's not buffet style. Forget about COVID. We are going to bring it to you safe and sound. And so we pivoted and learned from that event and just kind of took our cues from the hospital community. And they were, mask up, glove up, don't touch. Here, send the boxes untouched and in bags. And that just really came back tenfold.
And we're going through every day, we're watching the news as it's changing every single day. But we did kudos to IHCC and a lot of the organizations. They were feeding us a lot of good information that we needed, and it made our decision a little bit easier, go this way. But they gave us those avenues, those resources that we definitely needed to continue on.
Now, your father passed away a few years ago. What are you hoping his lasting legacy will be, Christina?
I think his lasting legacy is that that the business would continue in growth of not just locations or, the name, but in helping and aiding others to grow and culminate and see his family succeed. And when I say family, again, I mean extended family, employees, people who've worked with him. I think what he would love to see is his employees that he gave, I remember in the 80s and during the first amnesty, and he had us signing and typing all of these letters of work reference so people could get their papers. And I swear to you, it had to be over 2,000 letters that I had typed. And I was frustrated. I was like 15 years old. And, and I'm like, Dad, do you really know these people? And he pulls out 5, 6 of those letters, tells me when they worked for us, what they did for us, who they were, who their families were. And suffice it to say, he shut up a 15-year-old who was just complaining about work. And to this day, we still had people coming back to us saying, I have a job now. I work in government. I'm an attorney. I'm a doctor. I'm this, I'm that, whatever I am. Because my parents could afford to send me to college, or because my parents sent me to college with the job they had here, that your dad gave them the opportunity, with the papers they went on to get better jobs, that your father gave them that leg up. So I think in that sense, his legacy was that of helping people more than anything else, and helping people grow and helping La Raza themselves become self-sufficient and not just be that worker behind the lines.
Larry, could you really quickly tell me the future of Los Comales?
Future of Los Comales is expand. We are looking to expand. We are looking to grow as a family, extended families, people that have worked with us. There's programs that we have. If you worked with us for over 3 or 4 years and are interested in getting into a Los Comales franchise, we will definitely help out. Economically is not an issue. We can help cultivate and motivate people to start growing a little bit more in the future.
And you celebrated your 50-year anniversary just last year. Is the celebration continuing?
Yeah, for sure. As we mentioned before, it's 50 and more, hopefully. And to get back to what you were saying about Camerino's vision, I think he would like this company to stay as long as it can, family-owned somehow. We have 6, 7, 8 kids that are working with us as a springboard into whatever career that they would want to do. But the restaurant business, it teaches you a lot of different things. And I think he would want a Gonzalez or a family member to be at the helm or involved in the movement going forward for Los Comales.
Well, I want to thank Larry Gonzalez and Christina Gonzalez for being here today to talk about Taqueria Los Comales.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. And this has been the Latino Business Journey podcast presented by the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I'm Michael Puente. Thank you for watching.